Welcome back. Who wants to talk about qualifying offers and offer sheets? If you have your hand up, you look kind of silly, don't you? You're by yourself, right? Or you have a spouse or maybe a dog looking at you funny. Anyways, why do you have your hand up? No reason. So, offer sheets. And it feels like this summer we might see more offer sheets being talked about than usual. And there's a simple reason. The UFA list is kind of light when it comes to star power. There are some teams that have a lot of cap space, and there are some teams that have no cap space already or very, very little. So when you look on Cap Friendly, you might say, well, this team has $10 million in cap space, they'll be fine. And then you look at who they have to re-sign, restricted free agents as well, and you say, oh, nope, never mind, they don't have the room. So in order to qualify for an offer sheet, and I will often see people talking about this guy should get an offer sheet or that guy should, and maybe they don't qualify. So it has to be at the conclusion of their contract, of course, RFA as well, right? So they have to be younger than 27 years of age. They become unrestricted free agents. They have to have played 80 or more games in their NHL career to this point. It can be over multiple seasons. It doesn't have to be one season. Same with 28 games for a goaltender. It doesn't have to be in one season. So, for instance, Connor Ingram played 27 games this year, but he had games prior to that, so he does qualify for an offer sheet if somebody wanted to put that out there. And they have to have a qualifying offer from their team on the Monday after the NHL draft. So it's the later of, I think it's June 16th or the Monday after the NHL draft, which this year is July 3rd. So that's going to be really interesting, right? Because, yeah, the qualifying offers will be in before that. There's no way a team's going to wait that long. And so we'll see how that all goes, because there are some teams that are really in cap trouble. And if you're looking to improve your team quickly, stealing a restricted free agent from another team can be a good way to get that done. But you do have to give something up to make that happen. Now, in terms of the compensation, I got all this from Cap Friendly. If your offer sheet is between $1 million and $1,415,740, there is no compensation required. So those are the ones that are automatic matches, right? When you're putting out an offer sheet, you want to make sure it's expensive enough that you're at least giving the team a pause to think, I don't know if we can afford this. I don't know if we feel this player is worth this. And so you have to put that doubt in the mind of the other general manager. So the next level for compensation goes from $1,415,741 to $2,145,061, and that is a third round pick. Which, again, if you got a guy for 1 year at $2 million and you steal him from another team, you're probably going to be fine with giving up that third round pick. And then $2,145,602 to $4,290,125. It's a second round pick you're giving up. Again, if you're willing to spend a $4 million cap hit on a player, you're probably fine with losing a second round pick to get that guy, because he's a good player and he makes some good money. $4,290,126 through to $6,435,186. This is where things get serious. Now you're talking about a first round pick and a third, and it has to be your own. So when we're talking about these draft picks, it can't be one you trade for. So let's say that Pittsburgh wants to make an offer sheet. They can't go get a first round pick they can't get like the number 19 from Chicago and then use that. It has to be their own first round draft pick. So that's one thing to keep in mind, because there are some teams that do not have their own first round draft picks. They cannot put in an offer sheet. And not at that level anyways. The next level, $6,435,187 to $8,580,250. That is a first, a second, and a third round draft pick. So again, it's expensive. You are giving up a lot in that following draft to get these guys. Now, the next level, $8,580,251 to $10,725,314. It is two firsts, a second, and a third. So that's 4 draft picks to pick up a player. But again, if you're willing to spend over $10 million a year on a player, you're probably okay with that. And then $10,725,000, $725,315 plus 4 first round draft picks. So what we've seen is that GMs will get close to this amount for where you'd qualify for 4 first round picks, but they might stop just short of it. I believe the Montreal one for Aho was very, very close to what would have required 4 first-round picks. I don't think that one would have been a 4 first-round pick offer sheet. But Carolina matched, and Carolina was happy about it. They were like, great, so we've got him signed. Everything's good. And to this date, yeah, I think Carolina has to be happy with Aho. They have to be happy with his cap hit as well. And so we'll see when his contract is up. And it takes him to unrestricted free agency. That's the one thing that Carolina was probably a little bit grumbly about. But considering next year the salary cap's supposed to go up quite a bit, I think Carolina should be okay with finding a way to extend Aho and keep him there. Although I'm sure there will be Montreal fans who look at that and go, you know what? He wanted to be a Hab back then. When he signed that offer sheet, let's make him a Hab. So I admire that spirit. But if you look at the list of players that are available, potentially, and I'm saying potentially because any of these guys can sign contracts between now and July 1st and totally put it all to rest, starting with Jesper Bratt and Timo Meier, both with the Devils. The Devils do not have cap problems. But if you're a team that wants to give them cap problems, you could throw in an offer sheet for one or the other. And, maybe another team comes in and says, well, we'll give Meier an offer sheet. Well, the first team says, we'll give Brad an offer sheet. And all of a sudden, Tom Fitzgerald has a headache or he has a bunch of draft picks, one or the other, right? Alex DeBrincat, who apparently gave a list of teams that he'd be willing to be traded to the Ottawa Senators. As talks have apparently stalled, he hasn't officially asked for a trade as of yet, but it's pretty obvious that's where it's going. DeBrincat, an RFA. And again, Ottawa's not really in any kind of cap crunch, but you could probably pry DeBrincat out of their hands with a high enough offer. But is DeBrincat worth that high enough offer, right? And then Trevor Zegras, one of the most exciting players in the NHL. The production doesn't quite match the excitement yet, but we know that it should, right? At some point in the near future, he should be a prime forward in the NHL, scoring 40, 45 goals a year. A lot of them are going to be highlight reel. He'd be a huge pickup for another team, wouldn't he? Vince Dunn. So if you want to fix your blue line, if you believe that the season Vince Dunn had with Seattle this year was for real, he could be a huge pickup, right? So Vince Dunn, who's 1 year short of free agency, I would think that him and the Kraken will sit down and they'll work out a long-term deal. But again, a team could just come in and say offer sheet and mess the whole plan up. Pierre-Luc Dubois, we know he wants to be traded. We know he's on the move. And that's where things get interesting, is that Winnipeg could give him a qualifying offer and say, here's your qualifying offer. And you go, well, I'm not signing it, but I accept it. And so he accepts the qualifying offer. And then all of a sudden in July, a team comes in and says, here's an offer sheet. And once he's signed the offer sheet, you don't have to worry about whether or not a player is willing to go there. If they sign an offer sheet, they're willing to go there. Going back to Sebastian Aho, it doesn't mean it's their first choice necessarily, but it means they're willing to go. They're rolling the dice and saying, I'm willing to play there if I have to. And so Dubois could sign an offer sheet with any team that provides him with the kind of income that he says, you know what, cool, I'll go for that. And maybe he sees it as a new challenge. Does not have to be Montreal, right? That's always been the rumor, but doesn't have to be Montreal. Troy Terry, again, if you're a rival of the Ducks and you want to kind of, mess with their rebuild situation, you could give Terry an offer sheet and try to price him out. Michelli is one that I did verify with the Coyotes, information for him anyways, that he's played enough games. And yeah, Michelli didn't play enough this year, but he had games last year, and so Michelli qualifies. And that might be an interesting one too. Would Arizona match an offer sheet if it was in the, say, $2.5 million range? Do they match that? Do they let that go, pick up second round draft pick? What would they do? Again, I like Michelli a lot. He might be a good pick for an offer sheet because we don't know what's going to happen with the Coyotes. Just saying, it is really up in the air right now, right? Daniel Sprong, who had a good run with Seattle. I don't think he gets an offer sheet. I'd be kind of surprised. Morgan Frost, if you believe in his upside. Keandre Miller with the Rangers. Very big name there. I would think that if you're the general manager with the Rangers right now, you're doing everything you can to get Miller on an 8-year contract and trying to keep that cap hit below, I'll say below 6, but I don't know in this market. I don't know if you could talk Keandre Miller into being at that number. And again, I just say that as a huge fan of Keandre Miller. I think he's an excellent defenseman who has more offensive skill than the numbers show you, and I think he could have some big years ahead of him. Gabe Vilardi in LA, finally healthy, has a 23 goal season this year. He might be of some interest. Evan Bouchard, So if you're an Oilers fan, Evan Bouchard's out there as an RFA. I would think he probably gets a contract signed with the Oilers before July 1st. And again, Ranger fans, Alexis Lafreniere. So Lafreniere's name's out there a lot. I don't talk about it in videos because I just feel at this point like it's just noise. I've heard discussions of whether or not the Rangers might throw in the towel on him and trade him, whether or not there's teams interested enough to pry him away from the Rangers for quite some time. But this is a chance, right? You could say, you know what? Lafreniere to me is worth, say, $3 million. And that's a second round draft pick. And maybe the New York Rangers look and go, I don't know if we can give $3 million to Lafreniere according to the production he's put up so far. I know they would very, very, very likely match that. I'm just throwing that out there as a number. And then, fascinatingly enough, Bowen Byram for the Colorado Avalanche. I would think he gets signed to a long-term extension. I'd be kind of surprised if it doesn't happen before the month's out. But that is a fascinating name on that list, and there are others. And this is the difference between this list and the UFA list that I've talked about a couple of times now. The UFA list doesn't really have those kinds of names. It doesn't really have game changers. And then if you look in net, you've got Ilya Samsonov out of Toronto. Now there's rumors about whether or not they're in on Carter Hart. If they're in on Carter Hart, Samsonov probably ends up leaving, right? And you probably keep Wall because he's not waiver exempt next season. Swayman, so the reason for the Bruins jersey, I'm wearing my Swayman jersey. There might be a team out there that says Swayman can fix our goaltending issue and pick him up. And Swayman's still a young goaltender, thus the RFA status. And he could have a huge year next year. And I'd like for that to be in Boston. Philip Gustafson. We know Minnesota has cap problems. We know that Minnesota's not in a position to give Gustafson a big money contract, but his numbers this year would tell you if that's for real, if that can be sustained by Gustafson, he's kind of worth the big money. There could be a team out there that says, yeah, we'll give him the big money for what we think he can provide to us. A team like maybe San Jose. I don't think San Jose has any kind of cap trouble for next year. Mackenzie Blackwood, Devils. There's already talk about whether or not Blackwood's even going to get a qualifying offer. So in the event that he doesn't get a qualifying offer from New Jersey, he becomes an unrestricted free agent, meaning there's a certain number they have to give Blackwood. I think it's $2.8 million. And they might just look at Blackwood and say, at this point in time, we're better off just to let him go to market and keep what we have with Schmidt and Vanacek. Connor Ingram. As I stated earlier in the video, Connor Ingram is on the board. Really solid backup work for an Arizona Coyotes team this year that really wasn't very good, but that was expected, and kind of that's the way that all worked out. But yeah, Ingram could be a good pickup for somebody, and again, it's a matter of finding the right number in here, finding a compensation that you're happy with, and trying to pry the player away from the other team. So you sign him to that offer sheet. They've got 5 days to then match it or decline, and if they decline, he's yours, and if they match, that contract you signed him to, it's a binding contract for that team. And if it's one of these really big numbers, you might have actually handicapped them with the salary cap going forward. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if there's any offer sheets this summer. I think there's a good chance of it. Probably a better chance than usual, only because there's so many teams that do have cap issues. And it is a relatively weak UFA market, so we shall see. But of course, the UFA market will expand for the reasons I explained with Blackwood. There are going to be RFA players who don't get qualifying offers from their teams, maybe for cap reasons. Maybe they just feel like, this is not a player that matches with their organization anymore. And then those players become unrestricted as well. But let me know your thoughts. Who do you think most would warrant a offer sheet? Who do you think you would be most likely to be able to actually pry away from another team? Because the one side of this too is if you give an offer sheet to a player who, and I'll go back to Zegras. Anaheim has cap space. So you could give Zegras a ridiculous contract. Verbeek takes 5 minutes and goes, yeah, I'll match that. And he won't have a problem fitting it in with the rest of the salary structure on the team. But there are teams that do not have that luxury. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.